Okay, awesome. Everybody back. Everybody, if you wouldn't mind, please mute yourself. And I'm really excited to introduce our guest artist for tonight is Rick Bond, who lives just up in Vernon, Cold Street area. He's a very well-established BC artist whose loose, vibrant paintings, mainly in acrylic, can be viewed in a number of galleries across Canada, including Hamilton Gallery right here in Kelowna. So he's going to create a small painting while discussing his application of the 7 elements of composition. And he's going to be happy to answer your questions. So with that, I'm going to invite Rick to take over.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. It's, delighted to be here again. Wow, this is exciting. So tonight what I'd like to do is, as Carol suggested, is talk a little bit about how I create my painting. I mean, there's many, many ways of getting to the end point that you want to get to. And but the method that I use is pretty straightforward. I'm kind of a direct painter. I use fluid acrylics. Then as I move and build a painting, I'll start tinting with heavy body titanium white, and that gives me a bit of texture and a bit of opacity. One of the challenges with painting with liquid acrylic paint is that it tends to be kind of translucent. So when it dries, it looks great when you put it on. When it dries, it kind of dries a bit darker, as acrylic does. And then it requires applications of more layering. The layering itself can be quite interesting, because when you get some overlapping happening, you get some interesting illusions and techniques, not techniques, but the kind of patterning that makes the painting have a little bit more depth and a little more interesting. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is get my gear on here, and maybe the action while I'm actually painting, we can talk a little bit about the elements of art, to review the elements. So what I'll be kind of coming up to is line, shape, texture, color, value, space, and form. Form in a painting is usually form is a sculptural thing, three-dimensional, but in a painting we can create that illusion of form as we do different shapes. So can everyone see that?
Yep, that's just perfect right there.
Okay, is that good? Okay. So I'm going to put some gear on here, and we'll get started. And what I would encourage everyone to do is, if you have a question as we're going along, I don't mind talking and gawking and walking and trying to do all things at the same time, juggling. How successful that turns out to be, it won't be any less successful than if I just paint. So why don't we just ask questions as we go, and if there's something you don't know that I can help you with, I'll do my best. So what I'm going to paint tonight is we went for a walk down at Goat's Peak a short time ago, and took a photo of a tree down there. And let's see if I can find that on my. See if I can find that on my iPhone. And that'll be kind of my starting point. So, everyone know where Goat's Peak is? Down near north of Peachland. And let's see. Kind of an interesting place. But anyway, I did this, took this photo. Oh. And so what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to translate that into a sketch, which I've done already in the interest of time. And the kind of the thing that I liked about it was, one, it's a tree, which I like painting. It's kind of silhouette-y, and there's a strong sense of light in the background. So probably try to use those use that that contrast to create the image. But you can see it's pretty. The photo itself doesn't have a lot of, to me, a lot of color. It has a lot of value, but it doesn't have a lot of color. So I'm going to probably use my artistic license and try and do something a little bit more vibrant with the overall palette. So that'll be the color part. So let's get started. This is the sketch that I ended up doing. I translated it and put it into that. I think looks like it's coming through. Yeah, coming through reverse on this side. Maybe it looks okay to you guys. Reverse in the what I'm looking at here. But anyway, that's what I did. Is I did a sketch, so I got an idea roughly of how I want to and where I want the shapes to be. The iPhone's kind of a handy little rig these days because you can just walk around with it in your pocket and get photos, and then when you're finished, you can crop them and do all kinds of good stuff, as I'm sure most of you are not, I don't know if most of you, but many of you I'm sure are doing. Okay. So the first thing would be that I probably would do is I would just do a little bit of line work just to identify where I want my shapes to be. So I primed the canvas. I like using canvases sometimes. Often the relationship that we have in our canvases are 2 to 1. This one is 3 to 1, so 3 high, 1 across. And sometimes I like to push the envelope a bit and go 5 or even 6 to 1, which kind of makes it kind of a challenge to take an idea and exaggerate it to the point where you get what you want. So I've got my sketch, and so what I'm going to do is just put in a couple of lines to kind of try and figure out just where I want the horizon line. Probably want it about 1-2 low, and I probably want that start about there. Probably put my foreground coming down in sort of a triangle, has a bit of a curve to it about there. And then, of course, the main element is the tree. So I'm going to put that here, start about maybe about here. I've got in my thing coming down at a bit of an angle and end up down here somewhere. So that looks, so that's my sketch. So that's what I kind of puts me in a position where I can see where all the various shapes are going to be, all in different spots on the canvas. So now what I get to do is I do the shape part of those elements. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a series of shapes that give us the illusion of the things that we want, like the tree, like the background, and like the foreground. So that's going to be my next challenge. So what do we want to do? I think what I would like to do is work on the shape of the tree, and we had the shape of the tree originally kind of look like that, and it's okay, but I think we could make it a little bit more interesting than that. And that's where artistic license comes in, that we can start playing around, have some fun, and just make it look exactly like it is in the photo, but have create some artistic license there. go. So what I did on my palette, I don't know, actually can't see it in here, but I'm using fluid acrylics. And I'll call out the colors as I'm going to put them on here so you can kind of sense how I'm going to go. But I think what I'd like to do is start with a bit of a range of color that comes down, starting with fairly light at the top and work down. So I have my darks, which again, the other element that we're talking about is value. So that a lot of the dark in this painting will ultimately end up in this area. So let's see how that works. So why don't we start up here? And what I'm going to do is when I put in some of these shapes, after they dry a bit, I can come back in and cut in the negative space to create the interesting shape of the tree that I want. So if I don't get quite what I want first pass, not to worry, I'll just basically get that later. What we're doing right now, we're using different colors like manganese blue, ant blue, quin crimson. I'm mixing them on the palette and creating a little bit of variety in the actual painting itself. So that when we look at the painting, it's not all the same. It has variety. So here I'm going to use a little bit of there's some primary magenta, a little bit of cream.
Rick, we lose your voice a little bit when you turn to the palette. So just be aware that sometimes we can't hear you when you're working right over the palette.
Okay. Well, I'll try and, be aware that it's, and I do have a bit of a mumbly kind of voice too. So I will try and turn and talk to you guys as we speak. So I've got a bit of color happening there. And what I like to do is lay in some of the background. Now this is all in fluid acrylics. So it just is going to give me the space, the shapes that I want. And probably when these dry, I'll be coming back in and doing a second layer over the top once I've got the color in that I want in there.
Do you mind just saying what colors you are picking again, please?
So right now, what I used there was a little bit of ultra blue and titanium white. And here I'm using, again, less ultra blue and titanium white. And that kind of gives me that shape right there. So I got about the shapes that I want. Then down here, I'm going to do somewhat similar. I'm going to, because I've got the blues and all of that kind of stuff happening through here, I'm going to use more of the grays, golds, and oranges down in here, the other side of the color wheel, to provide some contrast. So So right now I'm going to throw on a little bit of clean my brush. I just keep using the same brush. I just keep dipping it in the bucket, take the paint out, and then pick up another. So I don't have a bazillion brushes to clean up when I'm done. So what I've done here is I've just mixed up a bit of raw sienna, some cad yellow, and a bit of titanium white. What else I'm going to put on here is I'm going to put on, and I'm not being too fussy about grading anything too dramatic at this point. I just want to create a bunch of abstract shapes, and then we'll worry about bringing some reality to that a little bit later. At least for me, that's kind of my.
Something to eat later after that.
Sorry?
No.
Sorry?
No, I don't think there was a question. That was just a little background noise.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm just going to put in a bit of gray. Bit of green gray. And that green gray was, I just picked up a bit of yellow into the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. And I've got a bit of primary magenta and a bit of cad yellow medium. But you can see these colors are a little bit on the muddy side and a little bit muted. So what will happen, or what I tend to do, is the colors start out kind of grayed out and they dry back a little bit grayed out. So later on, when I come back in and do another pass, then I can come in with some of the purer colors or the brighter colors to highlight this. So I'm not too worried if the colors are a little bit gray or a little bit muddy at this point. The key is just to get the paint on and get the feel for what I want on the canvas. So I pick up a bit of yellow ochre. And
So are you wiping your brush but not washing your brush? Is that what you're doing with the paper towels?
yeah, actually what I would do with the paper towel is exactly that, is instead of, if I'm using a similar palette or whatever, I can take most of the paint out just with the paper towel. If I want to really clean it so I don't get the other color contaminating it, then I'll drop it into the bucket. But I prefer to just use the brush the way it is and just take most of it like that out with a paper towel. And that way I can just keep moving quite quickly. Okay, so what I use is now a little bit of magnesium blue and so what I'm going to do is keep adding that with titanium white. And as I work up to the top, I'm going to make it a little bit, and add a little bit of ultramarine blue. And I'm going to put a bit of that color up into this area. And I'm going to try for a bit of transition down the canvas. So you can see I'm working in different parts of the canvas just to get it covered with pigment. And I'm thinking in general terms about what I want to do, but I'm not spending too much time thinking about it. I'm more reacting to what I want to do. And then there could be, because it's still a bit wet, you can get a bit of wet and wet happening. So you get some of the transition of some of the color from one color to the next. So at this point, what I do is I'm going to start looking at it. I'm going to stand back and kind of, because I got it sort of rubbed in, stand back and have a look and just see what I've got while I'm coming. It's starting to come a bit. I think I'm going to mix up a bit of red down this part here. Not liking it too much. This red. So actually, when I'm mixing these, I'm kind of mixing them spontaneously. And then when I get back and look at it, I can say, that doesn't look that great. I think I'm going to change it. And I can change it as I go and just paint a new color over top of that color. And even though it's still a bit wet, and there will be some transitions happening, it will look a little bit more. So we can see at this point, I kind of want something a little bit more.
Rick, will you change up your brush or do you stick with the same size brush all the way through?
Well, yeah, at this point in time, when I'm working on the big shape, I'll just stick with the same brush. And I try to use the biggest brush that I can get my hands on that will work. So I don't have to keep changing. And then that way I can be a little bit spontaneous without having to stop and change brushes and do all that kind of stuff. So right now I've mixed up some alizarin crimson with some ultramarine blue and a little bit of ant blue. And we're just throwing some of those shapes in there. And
Ultramarine blue, and what was the other blue?
anthraquinone blue.
Oh, okay, got you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now let's keep plugging along here. So I just keep, basically all I'm doing is right now I'm just building color shapes. And you can see it dries quite quickly. You can start to lay some of this stuff in over the top. And you get some mixing going on, so you get some kind of funny things happening, which can be kind of cool. I mean, sometimes it's a disaster. And then you have to, like, okay, start from scratch and do something different. So right now, down at the bottom, I'd like to, I've got a lot of warm colors in here. I'd actually like to add some grays into it. I started doing that originally. I have a small palette. So what I would do once I get to a certain point, I would stop, take some of the paint off my palette, and start again with a fresh palette.
What do you use for your palette, Rick?
I'm sorry?
What do you use for your palette?
What do I use for my palette? I use a sheet of glass. And you can see as I'm mixing the paints, at this point, because they're liquids, they become quite grayed, mixed up as I'm putting them on. So at a certain point in time, I'm going to have to stop, clean the palette, and start again. The maximum amount of time that I can get on a run on my palette is about an hour and a half. So I'm just going to put some gray shapes for the illusion of rocks. And that can have a look. It's not bad. I think what I'm going to do now is I've sort of got all the kind of the big shapes kind of where I want them. So I think the next thing I'd like to do is go back and put in a bit of line work to provide a bit of definition in the painting, so that I can kind of, so it starts to take the form, more of the form of a landscape. I mean, it looks like a bit of a landscape at the moment, of course, but once I start putting in a bit of line work, then it starts to take on more, a bit more definition and a bit more interest too. So I'm going to, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some dark lines, probably with red hue. There's a lot of red in the landscape, and I like the red tones in painting, which kind of complement the blues in the landscape as well, and kind of make it interesting. As well as I will eventually come in with some whites for jump and for accent. That's a little way down the road. So why don't we take a look at adding a little bit of definition at this point. You can see it's very roughed in, like it's just a bunch of abstract shapes at the moment. So we're going to try and start bringing it. So I guess when we're painting, we want to try and bring it as far forward as we want to bring it, and then that's enough. So it can stay as a painting as a very abstract shape, a series of shapes, and not that defined, or we can go to high realism. So what I'm going to do, so now I'm using a smaller brush just for some line work, and I'm just going to put in a bunch of lines, some which may end up staying. I mean, most will probably end up staying, but some of them will actually be cut out when I start putting in, start defining some of the shapes of it. So right now I'm just using a combination of alizarin crimson and some ash blue, and so yeah. And so with the line work, what I'll do sometimes with that is I'll actually just use it as It's not calligraphy, calligraphy is about lettering, but painters, in my definition of painter's calligraphy. So I'm kind of just moseying around, trying to create aesthetic line work that will ultimately, when it dries a bit, when I come back in and paint the negative shape, will actually then pop. So and then we've got, how much time have we got anyway?
We're pretty good. We just come up to 8 o'clock, but we're good for anywhere up to 9 o'clock. So you've got plenty of time.
Okay. So I'm just gonna put some gray in here just to define this tree. So that gives it a bit of definition. And feel those shapes in. And again, those are grays. Now, so I'm out of the picture. I'm standing back here and I'm having a look at what I'm looking at. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And I think I still want to put in a little bit more line work. So I'm going to take a little bit of that. I think what I'm going to do is take a little bit of that raw sienna. And I'm just going to put a little bit of line work in here. So I might just kind of make it a mess, but the intent is to try and just kind of make it kind of interesting without being too stiff.
What size brush are you using for that line work, Rick?
I'm not sure what the number is because it's covered in paint, but it's basically it's a script. It's a script, and it's quite a thick one. I do have ones that are thinner that I'll use a little bit later for some of the finer work once I've gone in and cut some of these shapes out.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So I think what I'm going to do, because my palette, as you saw, is, so so while I've got some white on the thing, I'm just going to throw a kind of like white accent. It kind of adds interest. Especially when it comes to. Okay, so it's pretty sketchy at this point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean my palette off. I'll give this painting a chance for some of the liquid to dry a bit. I mean, I've got a little bit of interesting stuff happening here, but I think what I'm going to do is clean the palette, and then I'm going to come back in and start to define some of the shapes. And then when I'm finished defining some of the shapes the way I want them, getting some air into the tree and stuff, then I will come back again with some more line work and highlighting as to where I want some of the color to jump. So right now I see that I would like a little bit of, just before I do that, before I clean the palette off, I think I'm going to put a bit of jump right in here. and then I'll worry about the rest. Okay. So there's the block in. That's kind of the first pass, just to give me a sense of all of the stuff that I want. In and of itself, it's a pretty sketchy design, but it has a fair bit of color and not bad interest. So let's see what happens when I clean the palette and then we come back in and start cutting some of the shapes out and tightening the painting up a bit and see where that takes us. So it will be a process where paint it on, let it dry, cut it, come back in, add some shapes that need to be added again. So positive, negative, positive, negative. So it's, and then probably positive when I'm finished. We'll have to see how many passes I need to go to get to the finished product. You just look at it just the way it is right now. It's pretty sketchy. It's not bad. It's not great. So let's just see what happens here. So if there's any questions while I'm just cleaning this palette off, be happy to answer them.
It already looks pretty awesome from here.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually kind of like it as it is. I don't know if I'd take it any further. I just like the looseness and the colors of it. So
I think that's exactly right. I think that's a good observation that one of the things that we will tend to do, myself included, is just keep painting and put more and more stuff and more paint on it. And all it does is get thicker. It doesn't get any better. It just gets thicker.
yeah,
And so I think you got a good point there. It might be wise, could be, we just leave this, let it dry, and see what it looks like when we wake up in the morning. What will tend to happen is when it dries back, because it's smooth acrylics, it will be a little bit translucent, so it won't be quite as vibrant as it is when you first put the pigment on. But overall, it's so what I try to do is, so you got variety of color, so you keep changing the color, and probably by just mixing the paint on the palette, like using the same brush, mixing the paint on the palette, you keep getting different variations of the colors without having each color being its own color. And they kind of run one into the other, which makes, I think, can make it quite interesting. What I can do is the other thing is I could show you a painting that I did this morning that sort of takes that idea and then pushes it to the next level. And we could have a conversation about what you like and what.
So did you say you're using glass or plexiglass? Acrylic?
Glass. So I'm sorry for my
Pardon?
question was.
On your palette, is it glass or plexiglass acrylic?
It's tempered glass.
Tempered glass, got you.
So I went to a glass shop and got a 1/4-inch sheet cut of tempered glass, and it works really slick as a palette.
Rick, are you just using water to clean that glass?
Just using water, yes. So I just have just a spray bottle of water.
Mm-hmm.
Got a little bit of paint on it. Just a little.
Okay.
There's a little bit of paint everywhere, Rick. Your
Yeah,
studio is a
yeah.
work of art.
I don't know what your studio's like, but I could cut mine up and frame it. So where I was going with that is that I was worked on this painting this morning. Okay. So, let's see it. So that's kind of has a bit more definition than what we're looking at right now. And that's kind of what I had in mind as to kind of where I wanted to get to. So you would actually come in and bring it up a little bit more to kind of say some of the stuff that you want to say. So you can leave it like that, which is fine. Looks pretty good. It doesn't look, maybe in the studio right here, looking at it, it might look a little bit better there than it does here. I'm not sure. So, but anyway, that was my,
So is that
That was-
painting complete, Rick? The one you just showed us? Is that painting complete?
I'm not, you know what, I'm not sure. I'm just gonna let it cure and then I'm gonna come back and have a look at it, but it looks pretty close to done, yeah.
Nice.
So
Sorry?
I'm curious. So you're gonna cut in where your tree is. In the other
Yeah.
one that you just showed us, it has sort of shapes in the sky. And
Yes.
so, you can redo those shapes and mush around. This one's more blended. Do you work, like, some people are so careful about the colors staying the same as what they started. Like you've got 3 colors in your sky right there, right?
Yes.
So as you cut in, do you pay attention to what you've already got? I guess you'll show it.
No, that, I wouldn't worry about that. Like I wouldn't be just putting those 3 colors on again. Basically what I would be doing is I would be doing some transition with the colors. I mean, those actually by themselves are not bad. But when I put the next layer on and I start cutting into this tree to define the shapes of it, then what happens in the sky, I'm not sure. I'm not sure until I start painting it. So, but what I want it to be is, this is a fairly dark shape. So what I would like is that the background, the sky, will be a fairly light shape. And so I'll get the sense of light. And then I wanted to bring some light into the lake area down here. So it kind of jumps. I kind of like the idea of having light in here so that we get some push-pull happening in the painting. So that would be what I would want to do. So there's a couple of things I could do now. I could define a little bit about this space down here and bring some light into it. Looks like when I see it in the camera here, it looks like it's fairly light, but actually in the studio here, it's not as light as that appears. I don't know what it looks like on your guys' screen. Does it look fairly light?
It looks fairly light, but not as light as when you put it on, for sure.
Yeah, it's all dark. It's all starting to darken back, and it's become more. So with the, I don't know if you can see it in the thing, but you can see that with that, just putting it on, you can still see the background coming through, which is cool. It can do that. But what I would like to do is cut some of that line work and make that, rather than positive, cut it negatively and make those lines cut into the painting more, so they actually sit in the painting.
Is this when you
So
would
what-
start to use the sort of more of the heavy bodies, Rick, or do you stick with the liquids for this?
Actually, that's a good point. So at this point in time, the second time around, that's when I would start to consider using some heavy body. I wouldn't have to use heavy body on everything, but the tinting, this is when the tinting would start to happen. So I'd actually start using some heavy body titanium white to start tinting some of these colors that I want to bring into these shapes. So that's a good point. This is a time when heavy body does play a role. I don't have to cover everything up, but I do have to, or I don't have to. But I would like to make the shape of the tree a little more interesting. I don't mind the palette, like it looks quite interesting. But I think what I'd like to do is just cut it a bit and make it a bit more, a little bit more airy, so that it's not so, there's quite a bit of negative space in the design. So we should
Rick,
try
do you-
that and see. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, do you only use heavy body in the white, or would you use a heavy body dark or other colors as well?
I tend to use, what I found is I've used the yellows heavy body and the white heavy body. I found with the darks, the fluid acrylic darks, have an opacity that I don't really need to have that for shading. The shading itself is just can be handled, for me, it can just be handled just with the fluid acrylics. I find as the colors get lighter, they become more translucent. And so there's two things. One, you get a bit of texture, which is one of the elements that we haven't talked about because we're not there yet. But I don't get a lot of texture in my paintings because I'm using fluid acrylic for most of the painting. So the textural part will come when I start shading with titanium white or cad yellow light, or one of those colors. Yeah. So what I'm looking at here is I want the value of the painting to be dominant in this area here, the dark value, and then lighter as it goes out of the painting top, and lighter as it goes out of the painting at the bottom. And then, of course, the background itself will have a fair bit of light. So when we're finished, we'll kind of have I'm hoping a pretty interesting dark shape, which isn't that bad at the moment. An interesting dark shape left, that I don't overpaint it and get too carried away trying to make it too perfect. And end up with something that is a little bit too overpainted or stiff, it could end up not being very, just not very painterly. It just looks kind of stiff. Yeah. So I think what I'll do for the purpose of this exercise here, why don't I bring in some light into this area here and see how that works. And then we could, if we've got time, work our way up into the sky and cut some of this stuff out as we go and see where it takes us. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so we use heavy body titanium white. I'll probably, I think I'll stick with magnesium blue in this area here. I might end up eventually using some titanium white with a little bit, just a hint of yellow in it for light. But I think for now I'll lighten it with, well, actually, I think I'm going to, this is where the intuitive part comes. You start thinking, what do I want to feel like? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit of magnesium blue and white combo. And then in this area here, I might add a bit of titanium white and yellow for light in this spot, in this area here. And it'll create kind of a center of interest in that area, and draw your eye through and into the painting into here. Let's see if that actually happens. If it doesn't, guess what? We've got opaque paint. Oops, it just went away. So I'll use just some titanium white and magnet blue on this side, and a little bit of titanium white and with just a hint of tan yellow medium hue on that side. Now I'll start using a smaller brush. And I will add a little bit of acrylic liquid to the heavy body just to make it a bit more fluid, because it is kind of stiff. Need an even smaller brush. What I want to do while I'm doing this is I just want to come in and cut some of these shapes out. So we'll just look along here. We'll put some and what will end up happening is after I get this in, I'm going to add a little bit of ultra blue, because this needs a bit of variety happening. So I guess a bit of transition happening. And then I think then what I'll do this might be a bit more yellow than I wanted. Let's see. You can see what I'm doing here is I'm actually trying to go in and negatively cut some of these shapes. And then we'll see. Yeah, so now we've got a bit of light happening in that area. So then what I would probably do is now take that and probably start running it up into the sky a bit so that we get a bit of transition going on. So I think at this point, what I would start doing is I'd probably start painting from the horizon, this line here, probably start working my way up the painting. And let's see where where it takes us. And now what we're going to do is we're going to that. So what I did here is I might, I'm going to want to make some transitions. So I'm going to probably make this come in here. And try and create some light. So I think what I'm going to do is start bringing in some, I'll go blue and then very light blue. And then the movie kind of tone later on. We'll see how that looks. And if I don't like some of this, then might come back in and change that a little bit. So I'm going to get some more, again, light. So this is the whole exercise for this background. It's just about tinting and cutting the shape of this tree out and making it different. It's going to be better, but it's going to be different. You can see that the liquid is pretty well dry. It's not like oil painting. You can work over the top of this guy pretty darn quick.
So at this point, Rick, you're not really looking at your reference photo that much anymore?
No, I've started to move away. I'm starting to just get into what the painting is. I can see the sketch and I can see all the idea, but right now I've just sort of turned that off and now I'm just going to paint the painting.
Right.
I need to use a bigger brush because I want to cover more ground more quickly. Well, I saw an interesting shape there, so I think I'm just going to Just play with that idea. Let's get some variety happening. Okay. So now down in here, it's background. It's right here. Kind of do that. All I'm doing here is just coming in and just providing their variety. And let's see. So what are you thinking of the tree? A little different?
It changes its character so much when you go in and do the negative painting. It's really interesting. It creates some interesting shapes.
Yeah, I think what it was by doing the kind of the negative painting into the tree, it one does a couple of things. It opens up the painting a bit. It adds more air to the painting. I think you have an opportunity to make the tree a little bit more interesting. And so what we'll do here eventually, once I cut in some of the bottom part a little bit now, is we'll come in and we'll probably add a little bit of branch work just to give it a bit of finish. So let's just see how that goes. At this point, from my point of view, in the studio, the top part doesn't look that bad. I might end up putting a little bit of line work in, but basically it actually doesn't look that bad here. I don't know. It looks like this. So what I want to do down here to balance all of this out and sort of keep that theme going is to probably put a few shapes in here, and then I think I'm going to be pretty close to just letting it dry. Basically, just let it dry a bit. So again, a bit more tinting. I'm going to use titanium white heavy body again. I might use probably a little bit of yellow ochre. And so I walk back and have a look and just kind of see where I'd like some white to happen. I'd probably like some white here. Again, using a fairly big brush and with some heavy body. And I might use a bit of diurnal light yellow and a bit of.
Could you say that one again? What yellow are you using?
Diurnal light yellow.
Okay.
So I'm going to mix up a bit of diurnal light yellow with some pyrrole red. I'm not sure whether this is going to be too bright and I might have to kill it. but we'll see. So I want some. Okay. Come in with just some, I'm gonna come in just now with a bit of diarrhea like yellow. And I'm just adding some highlighting here. Some of this I might keep, some of it might end up going away.
So I want to ask you a question.
You got
On the left side near the bottom, as you've been putting in your reds, you seem to go right to that edge and touch the color. Is that where you want us to go into the painting? Is that why you did that? Like, what's your brain telling you? On
You know
the
what?
left,
There
that
might,
little
there
bit,
might be, yeah. When I'm actually painting, it's not, it might be intuitively, it might be something like that. You might be creating a path. But what I am doing when I'm painting some of these shapes is I'm trying to keep in mind that I want to use different sizes, different areas, so that at the end, when I stand back and look at it, the painting looks balanced. So it's staying, so basically it's the painting is staying in balance. When I'm done here, like as you say, when I was creating some of these light spots, what I will do with that actually is the same, is that I would actually create the idea of a path. And I will actually think about that as I'm painting as well. So I think those things are happening simultaneously. I'm looking for balance, and you're right, I'm also looking for how the eye is going to move in and through the painting. That is correct. Yeah.
thank you.
So I think we'll just put in a bit more calligraphy, and then I think we might have to, I might have to stop and give it a rest.
We're getting close to the end. We're getting close to the end anyway.
Oh, that's okay. Well, that's good. So I think I can, what we can do probably is, I think what I'll do is we'll stop here and just let this painting dry, and I'll look at it again tomorrow probably and see how it's coming along, and probably end up doing a little bit more line work. Like some of these guys here, I might just keep changing the color of it, right? Just so it just becomes a little bit more interesting. And yeah, just adding a bit of variety, and it adds a little bit of, it keeps it a little bit more. Yeah, keeps it kind of soft and a little bit sketchy looking as well. So why don't we just call her a day here on this one? Let it dry, and then we'll see how we make out tomorrow when I come back and have a booth.
Rick, when you finish that, can you send a photo of it to Kit so she can post it for us?
Sure, be happy to do that.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you maybe move the camera in right now so we could get a little closer look before you do the finishing?
Absolutely. Okay, so now what I'll do is, let me just see if I can, you can kind of, so this is kind of what it looks like. Let's see if I can get this.
That's so cool.
You can see it looks a little different up close, I think.
It does. Sometimes when you're saying I'm going to add a variety of color from back, we
Yeah. So if we back up a little bit, you can start to, yeah, it looks a little bit different up close, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Looks fabulous.
yeah,
Yeah,
Very
looks
much.
great. Wow.
So cool.
Really fabulous.
There we go. Okay, well, why don't we let that dry, and then we'll come back and have a look and see what we want to do to finish it up. I don't think it needs a whole lot more, because it has kind of a, which I kind of like. I kind of like, I think some of you agree, like that bit of a sketchy look. And just over painting some of these colors, it just sort of happened. Is and in fact, it's kind of interesting here too. I don't know if you can see up close, but if you paint, if you do the, if you have a colored background, and I'm not sure if all of you do it or most of you, but let me see. I don't know if you can see, but you can see the background coming through.
Yeah.
yeah, you can. Whoops.
So what color do you mostly use for your backgrounds?
Sorry?
What color do you mostly use for your backgrounds?
Oh, what I end up using is just CAD red medium hue. See if I get that. Yeah, I use CAD red medium hue. Let's see if I can you see the painting. There we go.
Yeah, that's good. Whoops. Oh, there we are.
Yeah, it kind of fell out of its stand here. So I think what I'll. Oops, did I lose you? Oh,
No, we're still here.
okay. So yeah, so in the background, you can see some of the background coming through. I don't know if you can see little hints of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pinks kind of things that kind of pop through. And sometimes it's good just to leave those, you know, you don't have to cover it all. And it kind of gives it a bit of a glow that can happen if you leave it. And so, yeah, colored background does have advantages. I use that color pretty well for all my paintings, because I find it kind of adds a bit of a warm glow to the event. Yeah.
So are you putting that red on as a pure color, or are you mixing it with a bit of white? It's hard for us to
Sure.
tell.
And it's just, and it is the, there we go. Oh, yeah. Stand is acting up. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, no, I just use the acrylic liquid medium CAD red hue. And it seems to do, it works for me. It's a little bit cooler. I used to use primer and magenta. This is a little less pink, a little cooler. Seems to work okay too. I'm not sure that if it's that, you know, one or the other is better than the other, or whether pink is the color you want for your background or not. But yeah, it just, I think just having a bit of a colored ground gives you a place to start. And
Well, that's great. Thank
Sorry.
you. No, I
Oh,
just said
you're
thank you. That's great. Thanks.
Okay.
Does anybody
Well,
else have
let-
any questions?
It was wonderful.
Really amazing to watch you do that.
Beautiful.
Yep, thanks so much, Rick. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Rick.
Really enjoyed it. You guys had a good time. I did.
Oh, I had a great time.
was
Awesome.
awesome.
Thank you.
Really good. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank
night.
you. Night.
Bye.
Good night, Rick.
Thank you.
Take care.